The morning air was thick with humidity, the kind that settled into your skin before the sun had a chance to fully rise. Officer Daniel Carter yanked the door of his cruiser, shut with more force than necessary, irritation already simmering beneath his skin. It was going to be one of those days. He was due in court, testifying in a case he barely cared about, a routine matter that, in his opinion, could have been handled with a report. But the assistant district attorney had insisted he show up in person. His jaw clenched as he stalked across the parking lot of the downtown courthouse. Baton Rouge was alive with movement. Lawyers in suits, clerks clutching case files, and the ever-present hum of the city. He didn't care. His mind was already cycling through his testimony, thinking about what to say, what to leave out, and most importantly, how quickly to get out of there. Inside the courthouse lobby, the chaos was familiar. Security officers checking bags, attorneys whispering in corners, and the dull murmur of people waiting for their moment before the judge. Carter scanned the room out of habit, his eyes sweeping over faces and movements. It was second nature, the way he sized people up, who belonged, who didn't. And then he saw her. A black woman stood near the corridor, leading to the judge's chambers, speaking to a small group of attorneys. She was too confident, too composed. The way she stood, the way the others listened, it rubbed him the wrong way. She wasn't dressed like a cop. No badge, no visible ID. Just another loud voice in a place where people like her usually had one of two roles: arguing a case or waiting to be processed. Annoyance prickled in Carter's chest. He was already in a foul mood, and the last thing he needed was some activist standing where she didn't belong. He strode toward her, his voice cutting through the morning bustle. "Ma'am, you can't be here. This is a restricted area." The woman turned, meeting his gaze with a calm expression. No fear, no hesitation, just a flicker of irritation at the interruption. "Excuse me?" she asked, her tone controlled. That simple response made his blood boil, like she didn't recognize him, like she didn't take him seriously. "I said," he repeated, stepping closer, "this area is for court officials and law enforcement only. If you don't have business here, you need to move along." A couple of the attorneys exchanged glances, but said nothing. The woman crossed her arms. "I have business here, and I don't need your permission to stand where I'm standing." Carter exhaled sharply. Here we go. His patience was running thin, and this woman's attitude wasn't helping. He squared his shoulders, planting his feet firmly on the polished courthouse floor. "Look, I don't have time for this," he said, his voice dropping lower. "I'm not going to ask again. You need to. I don't need to do anything." The way she said it, smooth, controlled, unbothered, made something tighten in his chest. Who the hell did she think she was? Emma's hand hovered near his belt, not on his weapon, but close enough to send a message. "Got ID on you?" he asked, his patience waning. A smirk flickered across her lips. Amused, not nervous, not intimidated. "Do you?" she shot back. Behind her, the attorneys stiffened. One of them, a young guy in a gray suit, opened his mouth like he was about to speak, but then hesitated. Carter felt the shift in the room. A quiet tension, like everyone was waiting for him to figure something out. But he wasn't in the mood for games. "I'm done talking," he said, stepping forward. "Let's go." She didn't move. His irritation snapped into something sharper. Without thinking, he reached out, grabbing her arm. The moment his fingers closed around her wrist, everything changed. The moment his fingers closed around her wrist, the entire room seemed to freeze. Sharp gasps erupted from the attorneys standing nearby, their faces shifting from quiet apprehension to outright alarm. Then, "Officer Carter, stand down." The voice hit him like a slap. A firm grip clamped around his wrist, yanking his hand away before he could even process what was happening. Carter turned, his pulse spiking. Marcus Reynolds stood there, his face a mix of panic and disbelief. "What the hell are you doing?" Reynolds hissed under his breath. Carter scowled, handling the situation. Reynolds' eyes darted toward the woman, the one Carter had just grabbed. She calmly adjusted her sleeve, brushing off the moment as if it were nothing. But the energy in the room had completely shifted. The attorneys stood in stiff silence, some looking like they wanted to disappear, others like they were holding back satisfaction. Reynolds, meanwhile, looked like he wanted to punch him. "Do you even know who you're talking to?" Reynolds whispered harshly. Carter's irritation burned hotter. "She's trespassing. If she has a problem with that, she can—" "That's Chief Marshal." Silence. The words didn't fit. Didn't make sense. Chief who? Then, like a slow-moving wreck, it hit him. Olivia Marshall. The new chief of police. The one he hadn't bothered to learn about. The one they'd been talking about at the precinct. The one coming in from Austin. The one he figured wouldn't last long. And he had just put his hands on her. The attorneys were still silent, waiting to see how this would play out. And Chief Marshall. She was watching him, her face unreadable. Then she spoke. "Detective," she said, her voice level. "We'll talk about this in my office." Carter's stomach twisted, but his face remained still. Years in law enforcement had taught him one thing. Never let them see you sweat. Marshall turned to the attorneys, nodding once. "Excuse me, gentlemen." That was it. No drama. No raised voice. Just quiet, controlled authority. She walked toward the exit, without looking back. Reynolds nudged him. Hard. "Move," he muttered. Carter's feet felt like lead as he followed her. The courthouse staff, the attorneys, the security guards, all of them watched as he trailed behind his new boss, his own future unraveling with every step. By the time they reached the chief's office, the tension was suffocating. The door clicked shut behind them. Marshall walked over to her desk, placed her hands on the polished wood, and exhaled slowly. Carter stood stiffly, hands clasped behind his back, waiting. She didn't sit, didn't offer him a seat either. Instead, she crossed her arms and studied him like he was an insect under a microscope. Finally, she spoke. "Detective, walk me through what just happened." Carter swallowed, opened his mouth. But for the first time in his career, he had no good answer. What was he supposed to say? That he saw a black woman standing in a courthouse and assumed she didn't belong? That she was too confident for his liking? That he thought she was another activist in a way? Marshall let the silence stretch. She,